everyone. My name is Felicia Rose, and this is the Scars and Stillness podcast. Thank you for coming back for episode 7. As always, I want to start off by doing a trigger warning. As you know, Scars and Stillness is pretty heavy stuff, so just make sure you're listening to your body and checking in with yourself. Sometimes this kind of stuff can be a lot for people, and that's okay. So, kind of getting right into it. As always, I have notes over here on my computer to just kind of make sure I stay on track with everything. And so if you see me glance over or pause, if you're listening on Spotify, that's what I'm doing. I just want to make sure that I hit all the key points of all the topics that we talk about. Okay, so welcome to episode 7. So today's episode is When Safety Still Hurts. So last week, episode 6, we talked about the silence with survival. So this episode is kind of moving forward past that, when safety still hurts. So, um, so like with last episode, we talked about silence and survival and how you really start doing the most in the majority of your healing once you have allowed silence to kind of become you. Like when you face the silence is when you start to heal. I truly believe in that. So this next part is when safety still hurts. So kind of moving into it, my first key point was sobriety and stability. So as mentioned, in 2016, around Christmas time was when I was like, I don't want to drink anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And I decided to get completely sober. And that was when I like faced the silence and the just the pain of silence was really hard for me. But like it was something that was completely vital for me to do was to face the silence and start to heal. Um Again, my abuser was like very in and out throughout the time that I left him in 2014 until I'd probably say 2006, like Christmas 2016 was when he kind of was like, "Nah, yeah, you know what I mean?" But he was really like when he would get clean for a few seconds, it was the our family thing. He had the pull to the our family thing, which was really confusing for me with everything that I had already been going through, and of course, seeing my daughter and wanting her to have that good relationship with her dad that she did not have. Um, so yeah, I think as time progressed, I was, of course, a single mom, and it was, my main focus was just me and my daughter and just trying to provide a safe and good life for both of us. Um, and so kind of moving into 2017 was actually when I met my ex-husband. Um, he was probably the first actual, like, adult, healthy relationship I had ever been in my entire life. So with him, um, there was no, like, substance abuse or domestic violence or chaos of any kind. He was a very calm, safe person. And at first that really scared me because I'd never experienced that a second of my life. I had never experienced that calm, like that peace. I never had that. I've always waited for the ball to drop. And actually, in throughout the course of our entire relationship, not even just the beginning, I always waited for the ball to drop because I think that I had gotten so used to chaos that the peace and calmness of our relationship was completely unsettling to me. Um Anyways, so um he was just he was very calm, very centered, healthy, good person. Like he was really just there for me when I needed someone to talk to, and he was just very kind. Going through a time where I was a single parent, um I obviously had a lot of people like trying to come at me, and I didn't want anything to do with relationships. I didn't want anything to do with um, you know, fast guys that were just gross to me. I knew exactly what they wanted, and that wasn't something I wanted to give time to anymore. And my ex-husband was not like that. He was just very, like, he wanted to be my friend, and he, was there for me when I needed him, and I didn't have that. I didn't have that friendship with anyone, and that was really, it meant a lot. It meant a lot to have somebody, like, actually care, like, care about how I was feeling and, you know, would listen to me about all the things that I was going through instead of just tell me, how pretty I am and all the things that they, XYZ. He was just very different than that. So our relationship really started as just a friendship. Just we had built like a strong, solid foundation of a friendship, um, where we had just, we talked every day, and it wasn't intimate. It was just really calm, and um, it was very valuable. It was a very valuable friendship that in time kind of transitioned into a more romantic relationship. I think we had just, like, ended up establishing feelings for each other after becoming such good friends with each other, and so that was it just blossomed over time, and so from 2017 to 2019, we had a beautiful life. I literally have it listed as the beautiful years. I think in the course of my life, from childhood to now, as a woman, most of my life has been built on abuse and chaos and toxicity and, you know, nonstop, you know, crisis mode or survival mode of some kind. And being with him, our love was really calm, really safe, really structured. It was very predictable. Our life was very predictable. And in that time in my life, I needed that. I needed predictability. I needed stability. I needed structure. I needed calm. I needed safe. Safety was completely and totally vital for me. It still is, obviously, but, like, during those years, like 2017 and all that, safety was everything, and I was with the person that I felt like I was completely safe with, that he wasn't gonna let anything happen to me, and he wasn't gonna do anything to me. He wasn't gonna do anything to jeopardize our relationship, and I was really it for him, you know? And I felt like we were really building something together. We were building a beautiful life, and, um, it meant a lot to me with how he really bonded with my daughter and just really took on the role as a dad. That was never something that we had talked about, and that was never something that I had, like, even, like, asked him to do. I know that, that he knew the situation between me and my abuser. He knew, we had talked so much that he had known, like, he knew everything, and that was just the role that he decided to take on, which made such a difference, and it meant so much to me that, um, I really did feel like we were building something great. Um, in 2018, we got married. We got married in August of 2018. And during the course of this whole time, from the end of 2016 to 2021, I was completely sober from alcohol, drugs, anything like that. I was completely sober. So our relationship from start to finish was completely sober the entire time. And that was also a first for me too. I'd never been in a relationship with somebody where the relationship was a sober relationship. Someone had always used something, whether it be lots of heavy drinking or substances. Either my first love, we were either partying together or he was, secretly doing substances. My abuser was doing substances not secretly and then got me into it. You know what I mean? And then, my not relationships that I had with people, it was never sober. I was always drinking, too much drinking actually, and never really having a clear head. So being with him and being completely clear-headed was very new as well. It was very different. It was like I had mentioned, it was the first relationship I was ever in where it felt like this is it. This is a grown-up relationship. This is a healthy relationship. And um, that was new. It was kind of, It was like a beautiful thing, but it was also terrifying because it was completely unknown to me. It was not something that I had ever experienced. Like, I was used to the craziness. I was used to, like, the ball dropping and the chaos and the substance use and the abuse and just the lies and this all the things. I was used to all of that, as sad as it was, and so being with somebody who was not like that was really scary, and it was a little intimidating. But, yeah, we decided to get married in 2018, um, and I will add that in no way, shape, or form is any relationship perfect. So, during the course of this, like, as mentioned, like, I was completely sober. So, like I didn't have, like, a stress reliever at that during that time, and I mean, um, I never had good coping skills. My whole life, I never had good coping skills, and so I was basically trying to reteach myself healthy coping mechanisms sober. Like, because I was so when I got sober after everything in my life in 2016, um, I was a lot more closed off with the world. I was a lot more, anxious, a lot more antisocial, a huge introvert. I had felt like I didn't wanna give any more of myself to the world. Um, and so learning to kind of deal with all of it, all my trauma, all my scars, all my anxiety, insecurities, self-esteem, self-doubt, all the things that I had carried with me from my past to this relationship, um, I dealt with completely sober. And a lot of times it was too much. It was too much to carry, too much to bear. Um, and unfortunately, that was the weight that my ex-husband had to take on. He did. Um, yeah, because I would have moments where I literally just felt completely insane and unlovable, and I just felt like I just I didn't believe in it. I didn't believe in love. I didn't believe, you know he had done nothing wrong for a long time for me to even think that he was, up to something or lying to me, but I always had it in the back of my mind, like, you know, don't trust him too deep, don't believe everything he says too much, like, always have my guard up a little bit just to kind of protect the little bit of my heart that I have left, and, um so I've always had that. I've always carried that with me, these things that were never healed. They were never healed in my past that just move forward with me in relationships, and, so, yeah, it turned kinda rough because then we had the shift. So, for a long time, we had beautiful years, but then I had the shift inside myself where before I got pregnant with my son I got pregnant with my son in 2019, and, before pregnancy, I just felt the emptiness creep in. Like, it wasn't something I had experienced for a long time. Like, I always had, like, this dull, like, kind of nagging at me, or I used to describe it as, like, a shadow. I felt like a little shadow figure used to cloak over me, and so I always carried sadness, and I always carried depression, and I always carried these things that stayed with me, but it wasn't, like, overwhelming where it dragged me down. And I think before my pregnancy, that's when it really started creeping up in me, and where I just felt so overwhelmed by the relationship. Um, Obviously, we aren't perfect, so in our relationship, mistakes were made, um, on both sides, and that created issues with us, and, life happened. And then I felt like I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't do it anymore. I felt like I was not a good person. I really do. And, like, uh, I just felt like I wasn't a good person. I felt like he deserved a lot better than me because I felt like all the people before well, all the people, 2 people, you know what I mean? Like, the excuse me, the people before him, I felt like completely ruined me. And so I did try to leave in 2019, because I just felt like he deserved so much more than me and someone that would just honor him more than I felt like I was able to at that time. But I actually stayed because I was pregnant and we really wanted to try, to make things work. And, we had COVID happened and we had our son, 2020, and the same things happened. The feelings of emptiness and just this weird void that I had inside of the pit of myself of just being unhappy and feeling empty and just feeling um better off alone. Like I felt like that for a long time. That I feel like I'm meant to be alone at this point. Um and I was vocal about it to him. Letting him know that like I don't know what's wrong with me. I feel like there's something wrong with me and that I always told him that I felt like he deserved more than me and that I just wasn't able to love him the way that he should have been loved. I There were a lot of times I felt like I was really cold and really callous and really distant and I pushed him away and I was really hard on him and hard on me um and so instead of dealing with it I overworked and you know, I just didn't know how to deal with it so I would work all the time and I knew that that created a strain on our relationship and yeah, it was just a lot. It was a lot, and so my whole point of this episode was that I was completely safe with him. I was in a complete, safe, healthy, healing environment, and I still felt empty and hollow and unhappy and like something was missing. And I felt the pull of that shadow figure coming over me. You know what I mean? I just felt the pull of it like it's going to be with me forever. Like I'm never going to be able to remove myself from this. And um, God's always been a big part of my life. And I feel like throughout the course of my life, I had never put him on like the front burner, like the priority first, the way that I've always wanted to. And that was always frustrating for me when I would realize that. And I remember I wanted to get back into my faith with God as a priority. And we tried to do that a little bit, where I felt like we kind of got back into our faith. And my ex wasn't religious when we were together. He was a non-believer, not necessarily like an atheist. I feel like he just didn't really understand. And so by being with me, I think I kind of guided him into God, but it never felt like authentic. It felt like I just kind of it felt like that's what he felt like he had to do, because that's what something that I wanted. So it just almost felt like he was just supporting something that I wanted to do. And it's always been really important for me to have a relationship led by God. Like two of us have a relationship together that we grow stronger together, but through God. God is at the center of our relationship and at the center of our life. That's always been something that's super important to me. And I feel like for whatever reason, that's never really happened. Like it never stays that way. Anyways, just with life and kind of my own trauma and my own things, the end happened. 2022. I finally left, and I felt just this insane pull of freedom. And I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't pretend that these things weren't happening inside of myself, that I wasn't hollow and unhappy and, feeling like I needed to be alone and that something was wrong with me. Those feelings never went away and I don't even know why I carried those. And I'm assuming that just from the abuse and the bad things that have happened to me in my past or, just even being with my first love and like the infidelity and the things that had happened with him, it just takes a weight on a person. You know what I mean? Like it just messes with your self-worth and your self-esteem. And I never felt good enough for anyone. I always felt like, people are going to love me and use me up and then toss me aside because that's what has happened to me my whole life. And I feel like with my ex-husband, he's the safest relationship that I ever had. And I felt like he was the only relationship where I was safe to tell him that I didn't want to do it anymore. and that I felt like he deserved so much more than me. Um, Honestly, like, out of all my relationships, I regret marrying my ex-husband, and I don't mean that in a mean way, I mean that in an honest way. I know that I hurt him. I know that I broke apart the family that we had built, um, and I feel like he had always deserved more than me. He always deserved better than me because I was always really hurt, and I took the weight of relationships that weren't even his fault and brought them to him, and he was a good man, and he wanted to carry that, and that's not something that he should have carried. Realistically, I should have never married him. I should have probably never even been in a relationship with him. I should have gotten healed completely before I moved forward into a relationship. Even though I do feel like, being with him did help me heal. And he has told me that being with me had helped him heal in ways that I didn't even know. And so I know that being with each other was really beneficial and beautiful. But I also feel like marriage is sacred, like marriage is so sacred. And um it was just really hard to realize that, like, that's kind of where we ended up, and I obviously felt like it was my fault because he was in it forever, like, that, he's like, "I married you, and this is what I want forever," and, um, so I felt like the divorce was my fault, of course, and because I had just had this overwhelming feeling of just needing to be alone or, like, feeling like I just wasn't good enough and that I just couldn't do it anymore. It was so overwhelming that I literally felt like I was suffocating. Like, it's so hard to explain to people because, I'm sure some people are like, "Well, why didn't you just stay and go to therapy and do all these things?" And, um, we had talked about therapy, but we never went through with it. We talked about these things about how we wanted to make our relationship work, and we never went through with it. And like I had mentioned, like, I started feeling the weight of the emptiness and the void inside myself in 2019. So we were kind of going through the motions from 19 to 22, um, just kind of with how I was feeling with things, and then eventually I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't deal with the weight of it anymore, and um, it makes me sad. Talking about it makes me sad, thinking about it makes me sad because, um, he really is a genuinely good man, and he deserves all the love and honor and respect, and it was just not something I was able to give him anymore, and, I've always been woman enough to admit my mistakes and admit when I'm wrong, and I was definitely wrong. I I shouldn't have married him when I was broken, you know? And the full circle part to me is just crazy. Kind of like honoring the truth and the safety doesn't always heal the pain that's inside. Like I was in this safe relationship for years and I was still completely consumed by all that pain on the inside of me. Like unchecked trauma and unchecked healing that never went away because we never dealt with it. You know, I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast where I was like or podcast episode where I hate the expression of well, it's in the past, move on, it's in the past. It's not in the past. I don't know why people always say that. That is such a false statement, it's crazy. Yes, it happened in the past, but it never got worked through, so it's just there. It's called unchecked trauma, and it's never gonna go away. It's gonna carry over into every single thing that you do forever. And like I just said, it was situations and hurt and wounds that had happened in other relationships that carried over to him that was honestly not fair, you know? And then, of course, I'm sure some people are like, "Well, he knew exactly what he was getting involved with when he got with you." That is true. I was very open and transparent with him the entire time about how messed up I was. I literally felt like I was so messed up beyond repair that I was no good. And that was not a new feeling for me. I had always felt like that, and, I was always really honest about that. But regardless of honesty and feeling the way that I felt and him knowing what he signed up for and just all the things, it still sucked. It was still in a situation that it shouldn't have happened, you know? We could have had the beautiful years without getting married. Um, and then knowing when to let go for myself to have that healing and then not have, um, like, our sacred vow be busted because for me, marriage really is just so sacred and beautiful, and I feel like the world today has minimized marriage. They have minimized marriage and the beauty of it, and that breaks my heart because marriage is sacred, like, it's supposed to be forever, and so I do regret that. It's just it's a lot. I am happy that him and I are at a place where we're good. I mean, we're friends and we co-parent and things are good. Um, but the full circle part of everything, like I was saying, is crazy to me because we split in 2022 and even now with where I'm at in my life, I still deal with it. I still deal with waking up, not feeling good enough, feeling the void, feeling the shadow, feeling like I need to be alone, like I'm literally better off alone. Whenever I feel triggered or anything, I literally resort to that. I resort to you need to run, you need to go away, you need to be alone because if you are alone, you don't have to worry about getting hurt. You don't have to worry about, not being good enough for someone or someone leaving. If you're alone, nobody can leave you. And I know that those are all really unhealthy like processes, but I spiral. Like when I get triggered, it's like this spiral effect that I just can't find the ledge. Like I cannot come out of it. And that's like what we're talking about in therapy right now, where I'm literally feel like and then when I get in these spirals, I like literally feel like I'm losing my mind. Um, and I know that it's trauma and I know that I am worthy of love. I know that I'm not my trauma and I know that I'm not crazy and I know that when I'm triggered it's not just a mood that I'm in. I can't stand that. Um, my partner says that to me or says that sometimes that like, well, when she's in one of her moods and that like I don't like that. That bothers me. It's not one of my moods. I'm human and I get triggered by something that has happening around me and I'm having a trauma response. So it's not a mood that I'm going through. I'm literally trying to learn how to rewrite situations and be better rather than tell myself that like I need to be on my own. I need to be alone. You know what I mean? Like so the full circle part is crazy because um that for me just shows me like it has nothing to do with my ex-husband. It has everything to do with me. Um I and I do feel torn because there is a part of me that feels like I am too messed up to be in a relationship. I feel like being with my ex-husband proved that because overall we had a great marriage, we had a great life, and it was very safe the whole time. So I had really no reason to, not wanna be there, And so the fact that I, sabotaged it or whatever I did or where I felt like I wasn't good enough, it's 100% me. And so when I have these feelings like I'm too messed up to be in relationships, it's hard for me to think otherwise. Like, it's hard for me to think differently than that because of that example. But then, um, being back with my first love where we have a lot of history, we have a lot of wounds, and a lot of my pain and trauma was actually rooted in him. It started with him. Um, makes it all very, very complicated. I'm trying to let it go, let go, let God, and heal, and not I'm not that person anymore, I'm not that kid anymore, and I deserve I am worthy of good things, I'm worthy of love, and I'm not my trauma, and those kind of things that I repeat to myself on a regular basis is very hard. It's very hard to deal with that. Um, but, it's a part of life, and so this one was just really this episode was really important for me because even healthy, safe love, it's not gonna replace the healing only that we can do inside of ourselves, you know? And then I had also put a pinpoint in here that says, sometimes relationships serve us for a season, even if they don't last forever. So the times that I had with my ex husband was like our little infinity. Maybe it wasn't something that was supposed to last forever, but during that time, it was very healing for both of us. It was very healing for both of us. Um, and so sometimes, you can have those regrets of, making bad decisions and, like me, like getting divorced when marriage is sacred. I regret that and that's sad for me. I almost wish that we never even agreed to get married because we, broke the vow of being together forever. But um, I also put that we can be grateful for what was. We can also regret how it ended, but we still need to honor our truth. And my truth at that time and now, to an extent, was that I I have to heal myself. I have to heal what's going on inside of me to be happy in any relationship. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm kind of on the line at the moment in my life where am I going to be happy and healthy and healed in a relationship, or do I need to be alone? So that's kind of where I'm at. Um, Today's episode's not nearly as long as normal. Um, and I think that that's okay. I think that it was just really important to just kind of talk about this phase. If this has happened to someone else, then I hope that this helps you and that you know that you're not alone. I feel like safe relationships can help. I had wrote it right here. Safe relationships can help stabilize us, but they can't ever fix our broken parts. Like I mentioned, that like I carried over a lot of things. And safe relationships can heal a lot of areas of our life, but it's never going to heal the broken parts inside of us. We have to do that. So sometimes the bravest thing is leaving something good and beautiful when it no longer feels true. I was at a place where I was preventing him from blossoming. I was preventing him from being loved the way he should have been loved. And so I had to let go. Um, so I think just being honest with yourself and realizing that yes, safety and all these things they're very important, but what's really important is we have to try to fix and heal our broken parts. Thank you guys for hanging out with me for episode 7. Um, and hearing what I have to say. I hope that it helped someone today. Um, and if it was something that you're interested in and you want to kind of know more of what I'm up to, please feel free to follow me on some of my socials or all my socials. Um, and I hope to see you next week. I hope to see you for episode 8. Just know that I see you and that you're enough and you're never not worth saving. Take care.